So there are multiple models of succession. Models of succession, we talks about how a community moves forward. Okay, so one is facilitation model, where each community in course of time prepare suitable ground to facilitate its own replacement. I mean, if a region is, let's say, here, it moves around from here to here. Let's say there was a species A. That means when the next species B comes in to this region, now A will provide such region which will facilitate the income of B. I mean, A will provide and change the resources in such a way which will help B to establish. And similarly, when the next thing happens, B will prepare the suitability of the particular region such that C can come in. So this is facilitation model. Now tolerance model talks about a sort of opposite. Okay, the thing is, in tolerance model, it talks about, only the species, that are tolerable can come in. Only the species that are tolerable, that can tolerate the changed environment, can come in. Okay, so it's sort of a complicated thing where A is changing the environment in such a way that only those species which can tolerate those changes can come in and establish. Okay, and the other thing is, and the last one is inhibition model. So inhibition model is so inhibition model talks about a simple state negative processes where A inhibits the entry of B. Okay, it's simple. So when new species come in, they actually change the scenario in such a way that actually inhibits the entry of other species. Now the thing is, all three models can work together. Okay, all three models can work together to form a successional model. Okay, where one can inhibit the entry of other individuals, and only individuals which can tolerate that inhibition can come in and establish. Okay, so in an entire process, actually these processes are helping other organisms to adapt and to come in and facilitating them to establish here. Okay, so these kind of models actually work together to give an idea that facilitation, tolerance, and inhibition are factors in successions. Okay, then there is resource high ratio hypothesis, which was proposed by Tillman, and he talks about resources of the habitats are the key factors, and they determine how a species will occupy or come in to that particular region. And if the limited resources are available, then that will lead to competition, and competition will lead only to one species to survive and other species to go off, and only those species who can tolerate and survive in that particular region will be able to succeed. Okay, and due to competition, resource ratio will be created, so there will be availability of ratios. So few resources will go up, few resources will come down, and the new species which can survive that resource ratio will survive and succeed and lead on to succession. Okay, so this was the basic idea of resource. So this was the basic idea of resource ratio hypothesis. Now there are multiple stages of succession, where succession talks about, that initiates with nudation. Nudation is development of life in bare area. Okay, so there was nothing but a bare area, and then it started development of life. So in that photograph you can actually see, which we started with, where nudation was the entire removal of any kind of availability or vegetation. So there was complete removal of the available regions. So there was removal of entire life form from that region. Now it could be, primarily, or it could be secondarily. Secondarily, I mean, where was the secondarily? It could be primary, it could be secondary. Primary in the sense, if there was nothing but bare area. Okay, there was no life form at all. But there can be also the process where it was removed. Okay, so it can be removed by topographic factors, climatic factors, or biotic factors. Topographic factors like sliding down of a hill region, or a slope, or something came up from the top of the mountain, that might also leave, formation of new particular regions. Then climatic, due to flood, due to earthquake, due to volcanic eruptions, or due to any kind of factors like that. And biotic, like human fire, human settlement, human removal of region, or any organism like overgrazing. So these kind of activities also leads to nudation of that region. Next come invasion. Once a region is nude, I mean bare, in that sense, other organisms come and invade that. So invasion might happen with respect to migration. Okay, so first they'll come in few organisms will come to nude or bare areas, and then they'll establish themselves. This is also called ecesses. Okay, once they start establishing, other organisms will pop in also. Okay, so there will be aggregation of multiple individuals in that particular region, right? Once they aggregate, once multiple individuals come in, they will interact with each other. Okay, once multiple individuals come in, they will interact. One species will interact, one might compete, one might form mutualistic interactions, and all of this interaction can be divided into two parts. It can be either competition, where both two are fighting. It can be coexistence. Okay, so once the competition starts or the coexistence starts, that will lead to division of resources, that will create a sort of change in the resources, which is called as reaction. A reaction is the modification of the environment due to influence of the entire community. So the reaction will lead to change in the resource. The resource will change in such a manner that it will lead to formation of new communities, because other species will come in. Inhibition might work out, tolerance might work out. Whatever the thing is that is working, whatever changes that are happening, that will lead to climax. Or climax is the point where there is no other kind of change that will happen. So climax is the point of equilibrium, so that will lead to stoppage of any kind of other dynamism or movement, or external changes or again changes that happens to the climax. So that is a point of fixation. Now usually let's talk about rainforest. So rainforest has come to a particular point where there is no large scale movement, there is no change of entire species is happening. So there are just movements of populations across the region, but there is no entire large scale change. Okay, now when we talk about climax also has multiple theories. In the sense many scientists proposed different ideas about climax. Now one was monoclimatic theory or monoclimax theory, which was developed by Frederick Clements. He said that only there could be one climax, okay, which is solely determined by climatic and environmental factors. Climax might have a subclimax that is just about the middle region, or disclimax, that is disproportionate climax, not properly climax but sort of appears like a climax, disturbances basically. And there could be pre-climax just before the climax, and there could be post-climax just after the climax. Okay, so there is only one climax, and every event are divided into sub, base, pre, event, post. And apart from that, there could be polyclimatic theory, which was proposed by Tansley. He said that there are different elements that function together to shape the entire vegetation and system. Now, the climatic could be either edaphic, that was based upon soil, that is like soil structure came to a standstill and there was no further changes. There could be topographic, it could be biotic, there could be fire climax, in the sense talks about that is a particular point after which fire will come in. Okay, now there is climax pattern hypothesis, which was developed by Whittaker. So he proposed that the composition of a species, the structure and the balance are determined entirely by total environment. Total environment here refers to a sort of patterning change. Total environment here refers to a change of patterns among the vegetations. Okay, so the pattern happens of environmental gradients, which are integrated to form different transition zones. So there are different transition zones, ecoclines, which work together to form a sort of climatic area, work together, which work together to form sort of climatic community. Okay, so these cause patterns of variations. So there is a pattern. Okay, so it's not an entire single point of climax, or there is no multiple climax. This talks about in a timeline. Monoclimatic theory talks about a single climax point, and polyclimatic theory talks about several climax points, where each climax point has a different sort of variations. Whereas climax pattern hypothesis talks about there is no subtle thing that is fixed climax, but there is a pattern of climaxes. So everything will come in with respect to resources, with respect to environment, and there will be changes accordingly. So that will be more dynamic, not a fixed point. So that was basically the idea of climaxes. Thank you.